Hey, hey there. I'm Chris. Welcome back to another segment from a Wednesday night show. I got Craig with me as always, and Joe is back to make a special guest visit. Welcome everybody. Hey, I enjoy talking Saturday Night Live, and it's Craig. It's been good when we've had some opportunity to talk about it. There's been a lot of shows about the best of Saturday Night Live people, so it seems like there's a billion lists out there. But I got one that I want to get you guys' opinion on, and I'm losing my thing now. Entertainmentweekly.com, they said, hey, we're going to pick the list of best performers from Saturday Night Live's past and present. Again, this is one guy's opinion. This guy's name is Dennis Perkins, and he's gone through the list. Looking through it, I see Fred Armisen is number 21. Cecily Strong, number 20. She just left Saturday Night Live about a week or so ago. Jan Hooks, Will Forte, Daryl Hammond, Adam Sandler, Andy Samberg is kind of like 15 on down. Any names surprise you, or any names you wanted to too high, too low for any of these guys?
I don't know, man. I mean, it's kind of I understand why publications do lists like that, but I just don't know that you can necessarily fairly compare SNL cast members through the ages. You know what I mean? Not to say one's better than the other or whatever. I just don't know that you can compare them necessarily because Cecily Strong and Jan Hooks, loved them both. But unless you're just going to be as reductive as you can be and say, well, they're both women, so I can compare them. Because what their roles on the show were vastly different. You know what I mean? But I'll put it this way. None of the ones you mentioned sounded terribly out of place to me. I would have put them on the list somewhere, you know?
Yeah. I mean, I think, I agree. It's hard because, like Eddie Murphy's number one on this list. And his 4-season run was done before I was born.
Right.
And that's not and I know Eddie Murphy, but that's not to say that I remember him that much from Saturday Night Live. Not that I don't watch older episodes, but it's been a while since I've seen episodes, maybe, pre-1990. So,
right.
It's hard to really compare and contrast. I love Will Ferrell. I thought he was always great, especially as George W. Bush. Kenan Thompson's always one of those.
Kenan is
so
good.
He's the old standby, but he always. I mean, I can't remember. There was a time where, especially probably in the 2010s, where a lot of people were really down on SNL. And, Kenan Thompson's sort of been that like consistent figure, and he always seems to score Emmy nominations for supporting actor. And that's not something that we've always seen with SNL characters, where SNL, players that get nominated. Kate McKinnon is another one of my favorites. I really love watching her perform.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's, it's in the eye of the beholder. It's kind of maybe an era of SNL that you liked, and you probably gravitate towards a certain character, or I should say an actor, actress on that era of Saturday Night Live that you just absolutely love. Maybe, and again, it doesn't have to necessarily mean like you were on there for 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 seasons, but everybody will remember, Chris Farley's work or Rob Schneider's work, probably, even though they've kind of, Rob Schneider's maybe beyond that, and Chris Farley kind of eclipsed his SNL days with some of his stuff. But there's iconic scenes like the Chippendale dance that he did with Patrick Swayze, and I think that you always kind of look not necessarily at the players themselves, the actors and actresses, but maybe some of those memorable characters. For me, Kate McKinnon, when she's always being interviewed about the alien probes, and she always gets, she had Ryan Gosling one time just absolutely beside himself. Like he could not finish the scene almost because of how deadpan she delivered this probing thing that they did with aliens, and she would always just break everybody. And that was sort of the mark, I think, of a great SNL cast member is like, can you break other cast members? Can you break the host because of how good you are at what your job is, which is to be funny? And Kate McKinnon did that as much as anybody.
Yep. Yep. And I think too that's a good point as well. And it's something that, I've seen and heard in interviews that, they'll try to get other people to break. Right. And there are so many good cast members or who are just excellent at that. But, and that's something else too. Now that you mentioned the alien abduction bits that went for years there, we thanks YouTube. We've started watching SNL again thanks to the channel on YouTube, because we're doing other stuff and we're not going to record or go back and stream it later, but we can go to YouTube and watch these, each sketch, each bit. We can watch Weekend Update. We can, the monologues, the musical guests, whatever. And I should be a curmudgeon about it. Guess what? Saturday Night Live has been funny every year it's been on. There's been some cast members, there have been writers that have done absolutely hilarious stuff. Yeah. I wouldn't even begin to try to tell you who was the 50th best cast member, let alone the top 10 or the top one, whatever. I thought Eddie Murphy was great while he was on there, but I just don't think you can fairly say his 4-year run, that in his 4 years, he did enough to make him the top cast member of all time.
Right.
Compared to, really? I mean, there was a guy named Belushi who did some stuff that was pretty funny. I don't know, but, Dan Aykroyd got a chuckle or two while he was on there. And I know these guys are on the list probably, but it's just a matter of saying who's the best.
Yeah.
I wouldn't want that pressure. Can't take the pressure, man.
I like the current Weekend Update host too, because I don't want to get into the, hey, are people biased or anything else. I lose it a little bit with the political comedy. Like Stephen Colbert, I like him. I don't want to hear. I mean, I'm not a big fan of former President Donald Trump, but when you're saying the same jokes about the same guy over and over again, it just gets
agreed
after a while.
It gets tiring. It's tiresome.
I was going to say, Che and Joe kind of go after both sides, and it's very irreverent. I mean, when they do the jokes, they switch jokes back and forth, and they're saying incredibly horrific things, but it's for comedy. It's not for canceling. That all that stuff's wonderful. It's a very okay, and these lists are great to talk about. They're made for podcasts to say, hey, look at this link. We'll have the link on the podcast. You can look at it. It's for debate. It's not a definitive list. I gotta say though, I think a lot of it is very subjective based on what you'd like or not. Like Phil Hartman, I love Phil Hartman. I was really bummed out when he untimely lost his life. I'm not sure if Phil Hartman was the number 2 top person on Saturday Night Live ever.
Yeah,
like him, but
arguably on The Simpsons, maybe. Because not on The Simpsons, but certainly as a guest, because he did so much voiceover work there. But I agree, man. I love Phil Hartman. He did all kinds of some of my favorite bits ever on Saturday Night Live were him. He is not the number 2 best cast member. No, sorry. Let's be be objective about it. Think about it. Run the numbers.
It's really hard because you could put. I know some people might say like, well, they were really good cast members in an era where there were really good cast members like Anna Gasteyer and Rachel Dratch was hilarious.
Oh my God, everything!
Debbie
Downer is the funniest thing ever, man. Oh my God.
I remember the one time when they were, I don't know if they were like Disney or whatever, but they had like the Mickey Mouse pancakes. She literally had Horatio Sands wiping tears from his face with those pancakes or whatever, those waffles, because she was so funny and deadpan, but she's not on this list. And that's not an indictment on her or on anybody. Right. It's just, I think when you make a list like this, it's probably a pretty I don't know that they had some council of Entertainment Weekly reporters that voted on this, and that's you want to try to appease all the different eras, I guess, but at the same time, it's hard to because you've got really talented cast members from every era that don't make it on this list.
Yeah, and therein lies the hook. And there was much sharing and typing and conversations on the social medias about what? The EW funniest SNL cast member list. It sucked. It was great. It was terrible. Eddie was wonderful. He shouldn't have been on the list. And that's of course, that's why it's a big reason why they do it, because it fosters engagement and interaction. But there's no way. What says who? Says who this list matters, but it is interesting, and something else that I like about it too is that it kind of fosters these trips down memory lane, because it's like, yeah, I know Cecily Strong just left, and I really liked her, and I saw her last show, yeah, but I forgot, about, for example, oh yeah, there's all kinds of other other cast members that I had forgotten about. Like, how long has it been since I thought about Unfrozen Caveman Lawyer? Well,
Yeah.
I just did, thanks to Phil Hartman being on the list. So but one other thing too about Weekend Update, and this is something you guys both brought up a really good point, or talked about a really good point about how Jost and Michael Che they'll kind of go after both sides equally. It doesn't matter if it's big news story, little news story. We got to fill the time. We got to get some jokes in there. But what they will often do is the guests who come on the show to talk about, they'll let them. They're the hounds that get turned off, let loose from the leash, and they'll go for the jugular one. And I like that format. It kind of works for the fakey news that they do once a week, right?
Yeah.
And that's another rebuttal I would use for people who say Saturday Night Live is not as good as it used to be. I would say watch at Weekend Update, any given Weekend Update segment of the last 3, 4, 5 years, and you tell me that that's not as good. And I've always loved Weekend Update. There's been all kinds of really good people in Weekend Update. Norm and Dennis Miller. There's tons of people, and Seth Meyers. All of the. But right now, I think Jost and Shay are doing a really good job with it.
And that's probably why they've been there for probably longer than just about anybody that's ever done it. But then I think people misconstrue, like, there are going to be, when you have, I don't do the counts on how many skits that they might have in a given hour and a half show, but if you have like 10 to 12 skits in that course of an episode, not everyone is going to zing. And I think that's what people misconstrue about the past SNL eras, that they never had any stinkers on their slate.
Right.
They may have had fewer. Who knows? I mean, again, comment is in the eye of the beholder. But I think that's what people kind of lose sight of, is that, there's a lot of skits that didn't work. Well, there's some that do. And you kind of look at it like a baseball analogy. If you hit like 3 or 4 out of 10, you're probably leaving most people pretty satisfied, because comedy is difficult. It's hard to make people laugh.
Yeah.
And it's, Weekend Update usually does that. They usually have, I think when SNL went away from live skits and did pre-recorded skits, they actually probably hit more home runs, because I think they were able to kind of plan them out better and not have to write them in the course of a given week and hope that it all makes sense and they can do this and logistically it can happen. So when they started doing pre-recorded stuff, whether it's a fake commercial or, the music videos that they do a lot of, those really started working very well. I mean, Andy Samberg, almost made a new career out of it, where he was able to kind of catapult himself to, TV and movie fame. So, I think people are a little harsher on SNL maybe than they should be. Not every skit's going to work, and I think that SNL realizes that. But what they try to do is, give you the best possible show on topical humor that they can.
Here's a rough thing. I was watching a little bit of the Miley Cyrus, Dolly Parton, NBC late night New Year's Eve special.
Right.
They're trying to shoehorn some SNL sketches in there, and just didn't work as well. I mean, I think they were trying to say, how do we create another Silent Live, during the show, but it just felt weird. But that's just me. All right. Well, hey, we got one more thing to tape, but before we get there, Craig, any movie things coming this week? I know it's the first week of the year, and
it's
but
usually a slower week, especially for our good friend George Thomas at the Akron Beacon Journal. But we will be recording tomorrow night, and we will be catching up on some end of the year stuff, and he'll be giving me some of his favorite things, and I will be also sharing some of my favorite things that we watched, movies, streaming, everything in between. So can't wait to talk to George about that as we head into sort of a little bit of a lull in the movie season for most people, as the beginning of the year, not exactly the most exciting in the movie calendar, but we will make it through with George. And I believe we will be talking to Bob as well at some point this week. I know that we had a holdover of Puss in Boots, that sequel that came out there towards the end of the year, and we just had some scheduling issues with some holiday travel, so I think we're going to try to get back at it maybe Friday morning.
You can tell George he's got more time now. Browns are not in the playoffs, so you don't have to worry about that. So,
well, that is true.
The Steelers are actually doing kind of good, so we'll see. All right. Well, hey, we got another segment coming in. I got a hard out, so let's get out of here, and we'll be back shortly. Have a good one, everybody.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Mooney. Welcome to what is our new Hope Interrupted podcast based on the work from our book, Hope Interrupted, that I co-authored with my good friend Byron McCauley.
Hey, Jennifer, I'm looking forward to this podcast as much as I was looking forward to writing this book with you. We hope to interview some high-impact folks as well as have a little fun.
We're going to cover stories of hope. To learn more about our podcast and our book, please visit www.hopeinterrupted.com.